Welcome to the 6th episode of Vital Questions. As always, I'm your host, Che Guerrero, with
La co-host.
my co-host. As always, my co-host, how are you?
Overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? Every time we do this, I keep thinking of like a different adjective to properly describe what's happening because I feel like tired is just, I don't want to be boring and be like,
Mhm,
I'm always tired because I think
mhm,
we're all very tired.
mhm.
So I feel like overwhelmed is proper.
Overwhelmed is a good word, especially this. I know every week it's just like tough. It's tough. It's tough.
hmm
But this week, with everything that's going on with Trump, especially, it's always Trump. It's always Trump. It's fucking, my God, I dream about Trump.
All right, that sounds
It's terrible, but the
no,
guy
no, no,
is
no, no,
sleeping
no.
to
It's no to be like I dream about Trump is more. It sounds more like I dream about
oh
Trump.
no, dear God. You know what? You're right. I have nightmares about Trump.
There you go.
That's actually better.
There you go.
That's actually better. Especially with everything that's been going on, with CCOT.
Yeah.
And it's becoming, we've talked about this, anybody in the immigration, not even immigration. We're gonna get into it. Anybody is
Anybody.
ending
They've
up in
already,
CCOT.
they've already, well, not only ending up in CCOT, but just like ending up in potential detainment and deportation process, right? Because it's not only CCOT. Yeah, CCOT is the worst of the worst. I
Yeah.
think between that and Guantanamo Bay, I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah.
Are they still sending people there? I don't.
I don't think they've been sending people there. I think it's still to El Salvador. I think
Yeah.
a plane went recently with about 10 people
Mm,
just a few weeks ago.
yeah.
Just a few days ago, actually.
Right.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. I should have gotten when exactly another plane went out, but everything's jumbled up in my head as one long day.
Well, right, because I also always try to think of like what is it that we're missing? What is it that we're not seeing? What is it that we're being distracted by? Right?
Mhm.
Because the whole what is it? Shock and overwhelm? No, shock
Shocking.
and
Oh,
yeah, the whole shock and awe of it all. I'm I'm trying to always keep that in mind because that's still a tactic that's being
hmm
used, right? So I just realized now that I'm like, oh yeah, all of our conversations have been focused on primarily on CCOT in terms of detention centers,
hmm
but there's whole Guantanamo Bay was the first issue, right? Like one of the first kind of red flags of this whole detainment process that we're like, what do you mean you're sending people that don't have actual criminal records to Guantanamo
Guantanamo Bay.
Bay that was created to hold actual real terrorists after 9/11, right? Like it, yeah,
I'm sorry. I just remember like that was a month ago
yeah,
that we went from Guantanamo Bay to him like, okay, fine, Guantanamo Bay. I guess I can't, but I'll send them to El Salvador then. And
yeah,
and yeah, like I mean, like we mentioned, everybody's being sent. We didn't have this up as one of the things we were supposed to talk about, but last night,
mm-hmm,
uh, you know, a U.S. citizen who was being held in Florida
yeah.
was released and was able to finally go back to his mother. It was a 20-year-old
Who was born in the U.S.
Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez, I believe
Mm-hmm.
was his name. He born in the U.S.,
Yep.
lived in Mexico for a little while, came back, was from Georgia, was traveling from Georgia to Florida to work when he
Mm-hmm.
was stopped by a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And because of Florida's laws, new law saying that if you come into the state undocumented, it's an illegal entry into the state.
Right. But he's a
But
citizen.
he's a citizen. So he was taken in, judge. Like the mom was like, he is a U.S. citizen. She came down with his social security and his birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
A judge
Verify.
verified it.
Mm-hmm.
These are real,
Mm-hmm.
but I cannot let you go because there is an ICE order against you.
Mm-hmm.
So an ICE order trumps, fucking, I hate that word even in that sense. So an ICE order trumps a judge order.
Yeah, I mean, apparently in this administration, that's not supposed to,
It's
but
not supposed to. And he was gonna be held until ICE came to pick him up,
Mhm.
but it wasn't until public outcry that
and
they were like,
and
okay, we made a mistake. We're gonna let him go.
and that's the thing, right? Like I think that people also need to remember that. I feel like a lot of us probably feel very helpless. And I know every conversation that I have with people, pretty much everyone's just like, well, I don't feel like I can do anything because I'm one person and all of that, right? And we try to reiterate the importance of one, kind of like knowing your rights kind of throughout,
Mhm.
for as helpful as that may be at this stage of the game, right? In terms of trying to exercise those rights, and whether or not people will listen to them is a different story, unfortunately.
That's the thing where we're
Right.
arguing. Like, how do you fight for your rights when this administration clearly does not give a fuck?
Right. And that's you extra cursy today.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm extra pissed. Have I cursed that much, people? Like, write in the comments how many times I've cursed
It's
up
already been
until
like 3 or 4
in
times.
5 minutes.
I'm
I
saying.
think I'm sorry. You know what? You know what it was? I did stand up last night. I did. I do stand up comedy sometimes. Y'all might not know that. And when I'm on stage, I get a little loose. I get a little loose with my words. You know, I'll be
I
like,
need you to rein it in a little bit. Just tighten up. Tighten up. You're a little loose.
I don't know. You know, we're talking about like everything that's going on, and
Yeah, no
they
hyped.
they expecting us to act with decorum, and
Right.
meanwhile they're putting people in seat. I think I can say fuck a few more times.
You're right. You know,
I think we good.
I'm just trying not to deter the grandmas that are hopefully listening too, and just like, mijo, no te ponga con eso. Like, why are you, you know, like, why are you?
If any grandma's listening to us and they know what I'm about, I'm sure they're in Spanish going, ese maldito coño, ese fucking hombre.
Maybe. But we digress.
But you know what? Like, we were gonna jump around, but let's talk about this. You know, we're talking
Yeah.
about anybody's being sent to these places regardless of status. We're gonna
Mhm.
flip it up a little bit here, and let's talk about the fact that another U.S. citizen, a Connecticut woman, was sent a letter of deportation by the Department of Homeland Security.
And this wasn't an immigration lawyer, right? Because we've seen that separately that's happened. That we saw, I think, 2 immigration lawyers specifically
Yes.
received a notice to self-deport, basically,
Yeah.
even though both of them are US citizens. And I know that I'm always trying to think of like all the different arguments. They're like, oh, well, it was just a mistake and it was a typo. Because yes, lawyers, especially immigration lawyers, when they get updates for their clients' cases, a lot of times it's sent to them and then they relay it to their client. So in
Right.
terms of contact information, that makes sense. But in terms of the addressee, the person that this is being addressed to, being listed as the actual lawyer and having language in there that like, oh, the government will find you and all this ominous threats and all of that stuff.
Yes.
Like that's
Let me actually pull that up because I actually do have. So this is actually the other woman who got it. Her name is Lisa Anderson. She's 58 years old. She is from Connecticut and was born in Pennsylvania. And she got a letter in the email saying that she needs to self-deport. And this is the letter that people have been getting. And it is a very threatening letter. It starts with, "It's time for you to leave the United States. You are currently here because the Department of Homeland Security paroled you in the United States for a limited period." Some legal jargon. DHS is now exercising its discretion to terminate your parole.
Oh, actually, as a side note, just because again, I'm always trying to like educate everyone legally as well. So you're like some legal jargon. So when it says pursuant to and has a citation,
Important legal stuff that you should probably remember. Don't
like,
listen to me. La co-host, the lawyer, please give us this part.
whenever wait, put it back up.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
whenever you have language, and for those listening on audio only, right? So it says pursuant to oh god, my vision is terrible.
To 8 USC
Yeah.
squiggly line. What does that squiggly line mean? La co-host.
Section. Like it's a
Section.
section.
Okay, squiggly line, section.
Okay, anyways, that's a legal citation. So whenever you see something like that, it's referring to an actual law. So if you copy and paste that 8 USC, so it's United States Code, you know, section, blah, blah, blah. If you copy and paste that into Google, for example,
Yeah.
it'll bring it up. It'll actually bring
okay.
up the legal language, the law, the statute, whatever you want to call it, or whatever it's actually referencing, maybe a regulation, whatever. If you copy and paste that into Google, it'll bring it up. And you ideally want to go to like a .gov website.
Okay.
So it's a legit website, right? So then you can read it yourself. And yeah, and again, because it's vital questions and because we're trying to encourage people to do their own critical thinking and research, that's why I just wanted to flag it that that's technically a law that's being cited.
Okay.
And if you're like, oh, what is this? You can Google it. And again, if you don't have to, I don't know, I'm big on like, you don't necessarily have to be a lawyer. Any word that you don't know, you Google it.
Yeah.
And look it up. And then eventually you create context and eventually you understand the theory and eventually you understand all of it. And yeah, you may not be a lawyer, but at least you hopefully get it, like, you know?
See, but that's what they want you. They want you to like feel exhausted by having to look this stuff up,
yeah.
which is what we will do for you. And remember to click like and subscribe so you can have us look stuff up for you, and then we'll present it to you, and you can leave us in the comments. I'm just trying to get people to engage with this stuff. But anyways, but this email was sent to immigration lawyers, of course, and you know, DHS said, oh, it was an error because of the person's emails, like all the emails that we have from that this person has given us. We try to contact every single one to make sure that we reach the person, yada, yada, yada. That's what they said to the immigration lawyers, right? And the immigration lawyers were saying, no, this was sent to me,
Yeah.
not
It
directed,
didn't reference a client.
didn't reference the client.
Mhm.
Same thing with the woman who got this email.
And
And
this woman is not an
and
immigration
this
lawyer.
woman is not an immigration lawyer. She's just a regular citizen. She
Mhm.
looks like she bakes cookies for the local church on the weekend. You know what I mean? She looks like she really does love reading everything on Oprah's book list. Like, she's just like a nice white lady, and she
Yeah.
got a letter saying that she needs to self-deport.
Yeah.
And these emails are coming in, like the lawyer said, really oddly worded,
Mhm.
some typos, that she thought that it was actually spam
Spam, yeah,
mail,
yeah,
that
and
they're being so reckless.
yeah, and again, the email itself shows the recklessness, right? Like, that was a mistake,
Yeah.
and mistakes are happening left and right. Like, are we even 2 full months into this?
I think we're like 84, 85 days. January, February, January, February, March. We're about, yeah, 2, 3 months into his whole
Yeah,
shit.
and again, if it was Democrats going out and sending out quote unquote mistaken emails to people saying you guys have to self-deport now, like it would be a crop storm in like news and stuff. So I just yeah.
That's
I don't necessarily believe I don't believe my personal opinion, I don't believe that it was a mistake. I think it's an intimidation
it
tactic.
is, of course.
I think it's the administration's way of saying we have eyes on you. We know that you do this type of work. We know that you guys are helping these people, right? And we've already seen that there's been executive orders issued, right, to try to
Mhm.
deter lawyers from working with these type of clients.
Mhm.
It's a full-blown attack. Whether it's from, and again, I will say it a million times over, like whether it's through the education side, whether it's access to information, whether it's attacking the judicial system, whether it's attacking courts, whether it's attacking judges, whether it's
Mhm.
attacking lawyers, like, how do we not see it?
Yeah.
How do we not see it?
Yeah.
It's just every single they're coming at this issue through every lens possible
Yeah.
and trying to suffocate this population of people.
Yeah.
Um
I read books like The Giver
mhm,
or 1984
mhm,
or anything like that, and you almost and you hear all these things about how governments are able to warp reality, warp the truth,
mhm,
cut down words, have people believe certain things, and if not, like, you will be in grave danger.
mhm.
And I always thought, damn, what great works of fiction, like that entire government can warp reality like that. And now that you're living under it, it is maddening
Mhm.
because I'm trying to grab onto the earth and try and get a sense of normalcy, but every day he knocks me off center.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny that you mentioned books because I actually saw something yesterday, day before, by a creator, and I hate like forgetting creator names just because like I always want to give credit where it's due.
Right.
So apologies to this creator, but he was talking about the whole like book talk thing, and like there's a lot of people online. They're like, "Why are you making books political?" Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then he had two posts. One of them was talking about like books are political, right? Because there's a whole demographic of people that, as of not that long ago, were not able to read, or
Hmm.
not given the opportunity to read,
Hmm.
i.e., Black people and i.e., slavery, right? Like,
Hmm.
or there was women particularly were also trying to be stifled in their education, in
Hmm.
their readings, and so it's innately political, right?
Hmm.
So that then dominoed into like another post talking about the book bans. And if you look at the books that are actually being banned, and if you look at the synopsis, if you yourself don't have access to these books because you may be in a location that they have been banned, unfortunately, go online and look at the synopsis. Maybe you can't read the entirety, but if you look at the pattern of what they're trying to ban, they're trying to ban Black history.
Hmm.
They're trying to ban any like civil rights movement information.
Yeah.
They're trying to ban any kind of suffraging movement in
Hmm.
terms of women voting rights or just women's rights generally. And they're trying to ban any fictional piece of work that is talking about an authoritarian government
Hmm.
or any kind of similar regime,
Hmm.
because if you don't know the history, or if you don't know the possibility that, oh, this type of government and all these factors that create an authoritarian government are problematic, and then domino into the apocalyptic nightmare that these books describe, you won't see the red flags that are happening,
Hmm.
right? So if you remove, again, this is an attack on education, right? If you remove those books and if you ban them and you say, oh, those are actually bad for you, and if you are of the mindset that you just default believe whatever this man is saying, whatever
Hmm.
this administration is saying, you may not question, hey, why are these books actually being banned?
Hmm.
You may not ask the vital question of, hey, like maybe this actually isn't bad for me. Maybe because Joe Schmo was telling me this crap, maybe I should look for it myself and maybe I should question it.
Yeah.
So that's why I advise everyone. Look at the books that are actually being banned. At bare minimum, look at what the synopsis are and like the summary of the story and the
Hmm.
plot and question to
Yeah.
yourself, why is the government trying to ban this?
And it's also, you know, pretty interesting the way things can be set up in place. And I'm thinking about like generationally, right? Like, let's say Trump is able to keep this up for like 10 years, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who are going to remember and are going to want to, like, put a stop to him and everything.
Yeah.
But if you look at people who already support him, plus kids, plus generations beneath us,
Mm-hmm.
in 10 years, they're not going to know what the truth was,
I
and
mean,
it's,
hopefully that's not the case, but
I know,
yes, if
but that's what
but
it
if
is.
that's
Younger
what,
generations don't
yeah.
remember, don't know because they weren't around. I know this is pretty cliche, but I'm just talking about myself here. Like, I remember growing up in the neighborhood that I did in Queens. I went to a public school, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember as a kid being taught manifest destiny,
Mm-hmm.
being taught that this was the United States divine mission
Mm-hmm.
to go from sea to shining sea.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy to think that I did not think about that. That was actually part of the indoctrination of the United States. It's supposed to exist. It is this. I remember that picture of that white lady, like the angel, with like
Oh yes.
she's putting on the phone wires, and people are moving to the west, and it's showing like, look at our progress. And I was like, I remember as a kid, a third, fourth grader who just got to the United States. You know what I mean? Reading about the history of the United States for the first time, I was like, wow, this country is divine,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until like I, got out of the public school system, and it wasn't until my late 20s that I started reading
Yeah.
and started realizing, oh my gosh, I really did believe that the US was this shining pillar on top of the hill, whatever the hell their fucking phrase is.
Well,
That's curse number 9. I'm
that's
keeping track because I do not fuck with this country's myths.
all right. Anyways, moving on. Just trying to keep you reined in. But no, but it's true though, right? Because the easy example that I like to always go to is George Washington, right? Like that's obviously first president and all that
Oh, he
stuff.
had wooden teeth, we know that.
And right, exactly. No, but but I'm sure, I
Yeah,
guarantee you that there are some people that still think the man had wooden teeth
had
and
wooden teeth.
not teeth of slaves.
Yeah. Yes.
And Revelation, in case you didn't know, that's actually what our first president used to use for his teeth. He
Yeah.
used to rip off teeth from slaves and put them in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like, and that's the reality that comes into play when you get real education and past kind of like the primary, elementary school, middle school, and
Yeah.
junior and high school that we have
Mm-hmm.
in the US, but it is indoctrinated, right? Like they purposely don't teach a lot of important information because that context actually puts the US in a negative light, right? Like the context of, hey, actually, our leaders weren't necessarily the best in the past, right? Like they were actually terrible kind of
Yeah.
people and foundationally had a lot of issues and had a lot of human rights violations, had a lot of like, all these different issues that you maybe they don't want to teach you because you're a kid, right? But like at this point, really, what are we trying to hide from kids when you guys are letting them get shot up in school? So, okay.
Exactly.
Like, don't at this point, like, there is no excuse,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is no excuse. There was just a shooting. When was it? Yesterday, day before.
Yeah. Yeah. At a Florida school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at one of the same schools, I think, that just agreed to have an arrangement with ICE so they can come to their schools.
Really?
Mhm.
I did not know it was the same school.
I think it might be one of the same
Okay,
schools.
because let's look that up. I'm gonna. Okay, yeah. So we got it.
Okay, yeah. So if you look up Florida State University, this is unfortunately where the shooting happened. And literally Florida State University, ICE, right?
Mm-hmm.
So CNN, Florida State shooting suspect, right? Like we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. And obviously sincere condolences to everyone that was affected.
Yeah.
Like this is, for as much as like we talk crap about this administration and just the Republican Party generally and their Second Amendment and all that stuff and their lack of care of actually caring about children.
Wow.
When it comes to school shootings versus abortion, right? Like when you actually look at where their stance are, you realize that it's not about people, it's actually about your specific interests, right? Like you just want to own guns to own guns.
Yeah.
Like if you actually cared about students and children, like if you genuinely did, all the arguments that you make for going against abortion, if you actually believe that, you would not allow guns in school. You would, this wouldn't happen. This just would not happen. It is what it is. Like it's so frustrating. And like, there's so many parents out there that have had their kids affected. And like, I can't even imagine having a kid right now in this space because like the fear that parents must have on a regular of just sending your kids to school. And like, we didn't grow up like that. So anyway, sorry, as like a side note, yes, this is the same university that also recently made arrangements, as we saw in the news articles headlines. This is also a similar, the same university that recently made an arrangement with ICE to work with them to find undocumented students in their own campus. So yeah, like
I'm
they
sorry.
have a bunch of things to work on.
I'm just shocked that this all happened at the same school, and
Mhm,
it's just showing where these Republicans' priorities are
mhm,
and how it puts us in danger when their priorities are basically based on white supremacy.
mhm,
Because at the same school that ICE is working with campus security to
mhm,
go after undocumented people,
mhm,
there was a shooting
mhm.
where 10 people were injured.
And we should probably take a wild guess as to like who's that shooting suspect. I'm gonna just take a wild guess and I'm gonna assume that it's not an immigrant.
I'm gonna assume that it's not an immigrant, that
Yeah.
it's a US citizen.
Phoenix Eichner. When he was taken into custody, Phoenix Eichner. Let me share a screen really
Mhm.
quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
um, right. So this is CNN. What we know about the Florida State University shooting
Mhm.
suspect. When he was taken into custody, Phoenix Eichner, 20, was carrying a handgun that used to be the service weapon of Sheriff's Deputy Jessica Eichner, according to officials and records. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. Yeah, his mom is a deputy, and he used her gun. Yeah.
I need a moment. If people can't
Why
see
are
this,
you
I took off
yelling?
I can't hear myself. I need a moment.
You're yelling
I am
into.
so sorry. I need to yell. You know what? It always sounds louder to us, and then later on, people are like, "You
Okay.
weren't yelling," but this is. Oh my god! So I'm sorry. I just need a moment because coming after the immigrant community like that, who time and time again, you've been told they do not
they're not
they commit crimes at much lower rates.
they're not the ones out here raping and murdering everybody.
They're not the ones out here doing that.
They're
They're not
not.
the ones out here shooting up schools. Literally, these officers are following brown and black people around, trying to find out which one has status. And here comes a white boy with his mommy's gun onto campus.
Mhm.
And I'm just assuming he's white. I haven't seen a picture of Eichner boy.
Let's look them up. And again, it's not I don't know. Oh, yeah.
Well, here we go. Can we put that picture? And if you can't see him,
You
here
can
he is.
yeah,
He's a white
you can
dude.
Google him yourself.
Yeah.
Phoenix, last name is Ikner. And yeah, it's a white guy, right? So unfortunately, odds are he was able to get in because if you were actually questioning real criminals,
Yeah.
maybe you would catch more of them and stop like sending innocent people into literal prisons because everyone keeps calling it detention centers, but that's the other thing. No, the government is imprisoning people.
Yeah.
That's actually what's happening. Everyone needs to be made clear of that. Like they're actually picking people off the street who have not done any actual crimes because
No.
again, being here undocumented for the umpteenth time is not a crime in and of itself. Unfortunately, the administration has now created a registry that makes it required for all undocumented people to sign up for it and basically give like wave their flag of hey, I'm here, come find me. In an administration that we already know they're just catching like rolling sorry just
Rolling
get
out the red carpet for immigrants to go to CCOT.
right, exactly. And they've now made it an actual crime that if you don't register to that, so if you don't set yourself up for failure, now you're a criminal, right?
Yeah.
So of course, so like let's make that very clear too. That in and of itself, being here undocumented, overstaying your visa, for example, is a common way that people become undocumented, right? It's not that they crossed illegally. A lot of people just overstay their visa. That in and of itself is not a crime.
Yeah.
If you come in through, if you like don't go through a customs and border screening process and all that stuff, yes, technically speaking, that's a crime. And if that's what you did, technically you came here illegally but there was already systems in place to address that issue.
Mhm.
There is a due process system
Mhm.
for that issue.
Mhm.
None of that is being followed
Mhm.
at all. That's what everyone keeps talking about. And the whole going kind of circling back to the constitutional crisis that's happening and the lack of due process, right? On everyone's mind is Gilmar Abrego Garcia's case, the story of the Maryland father, who
Yeah.
at this point, if you don't know his story, you've been living under a rock.
Yeah.
um, but we recently got proof of life after the Maryland senator, went down to El Salvador and was able to visit him in person.
Chris Von Holen, that's the
Mhm.
gentleman who went down. As we can see here, finally, after weeks and months, we have proof of life of Gilmar. This was taken in El Salvador. If you can't see the pictures, there's the senator shaking hands with Gilmar. There's also photos of them actually having a meal together,
Yeah.
and these are pictures that were put out by Chris and Chris Van Holen, the senator, said. Uh, I said my main goal of this trip is something he tweeted was to meet with Kilmar tonight. I had the chance. I have called his wife, Jennifer, to pass along his message of love. I look forward to providing a full update upon my return.
I'm just happy he's alive. Like, to be honest, at this point, because something that a lot of people aren't keeping in mind is that everyone keeps talking about like, oh, he had protected status, right? The people that are actually reading the facts know
Mhm,
that he had protected status, and he
mhm.
actually legally was not allowed to be deported.
Yeah.
Legally, he had a document from a court order that said
Mhm.
he was not allowed to be
Yeah.
deported. And the administration already admitted it was an administrative error, quote
Yeah.
unquote. And originally they were like, oh, but there's some reports and we have some evidence that supposedly
Yeah.
he has ties to
Yeah.
MS-13 and all this stuff. And then, sure enough, if you go to the actual filings that the DOJ provided, and so we have it here,
Mhm.
and under previous criminal history, it says subject has no criminal
No
history.
criminal history.
And just to be very transparent, right? If you read the rest of this report, there is this conversation about a 2019 incident
Mhm.
where he was caught up with some other people that
Mhm.
apparently they had criminal histories.
Mhm.
But again, you're not guilty by association, right? Since
Mhm.
when the hell is that our government system?
And this was outside of a Home Depot.
Correct.
Again, could have been looking for work. We don't know what the situation
Right. We
is.
don't know whether they were actually friends or whatever. We have no idea, right?
These
And
people round up
yeah,
brown
and
people because you all look alike.
right. And the reason why this is all being brought up is because this is what due process is meant to address,
Mhm.
right? Due process, your day in court, the reason why we have a whole system in democratic system in place to ensure that anyone that is in this country, irrespective of status,
Mhm.
per our constitution, is allowed due process,
Mm.
irrespective of status. I will
Yeah.
repeat it until I'm blue in the face because I'm tired of the ignorant comments in these spaces.
People
Like,
think just because you are undocumented that you have no rights to the Constitution, nothing to you. And that is a very dangerous precedent.
mhm,
Because if you're saying that you have to be a US citizen to get rights, then what is a US citizen?
mhm.
Because this government has shown that they're sending people away, they're holding US citizens, and all they have to do is work backwards to say you're not a US citizen. And it's very easy for them to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I just wanted to quickly pull up the actual 14th Amendment, and that's where this comes up.
Hold on a second.
Um,
There we go.
yeah. So this is the 14th Amendment, as we see, Constitution, and it's a .gov website. And here, an important point because I feel like this is about statutory interpretation, and this
Hmm.
is like legal jargon, and that's what I'm here for,
Hmm.
or partially here for, right? So I think people get stuck on the first line, right? All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction of are citizens. Okay, fine. So that is defining what a citizen is.
Hmm.
There's a period at the end of that, meaning the thought captured there has been completed,
Hmm.
meaning that the rest of this paragraph may not actually be relevant to the first sentence. That's how grammar works, my friends, right?
Hmm.
So then we go to next line. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States.
Right.
Cool, semicolon, right?
Right.
Thought is done there.
Mm.
Nor, right? Nor
Hmm.
shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That is
Mm.
where the concept of due process comes into
Hmm.
play. If we notice, they say any person, not any
Person.
citizen.
Yeah.
So shut the fuck up. Because at this point, I am tired of the ignorance. At this point, as someone who actually went to law
Yeah.
school and is actually a lawyer
Hmm.
and has been practicing for over 10 years, it's actually, it boggles my mind when people try to play lawyer. Maybe actually read the Constitution.
Yeah.
That's why everyone keeps saying that. Read it.
But then this is where they go one step further and they go, well, these aren't people.
Mm-hmm.
These are animals.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they dehumanize us.
Correct.
That's why putting up MS-13 gang members or any of these violent crimes that happen
Mm-hmm.
when a person happens to be undocumented,
Right.
they try to use those as a way to take away our humanity. So now persons, no, these people aren't people. They're vicious animals They're super predators. They don't know how to behave. So if you're telling me that persons need to be treated like, with these laws and these things, well, they're not people.
Oh, it's giving slavery.
Hmm. They're
Isn't
brutes.
that exactly?
They're brutes.
Exactly. And last time I checked, I thought we all were all in agreement that that was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And I thought we were all in agreement that that was just a bunch of ignorance being spewed and people are people. So now they're just trying to capture like Latinos and the Hispanic community and everyone that's just Latino appearing, FYI, warning
Hmm.
to everyone,
Hmm.
because that's the other thing. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, well, I'm not actually Latino. Listen, if whenever the hell I show my face on this, like we all look like a lot of
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
So you never know. A non-Latino person, you might get caught
Yeah.
up in something. So for everyone that keeps being like, "Oh, well, no, they actually are catching criminals." Well, that's already been proven wrong,
Yeah.
right? Time and time again, we've seen all the quote unquote administrative errors they keep
Hmm.
making. So okay, so that's already been proven on. And for everyone that's like, "Oh, well, I'm a citizen, so I have nothing to worry about." Okay, how do you prove that you're a citizen? Oh, well, I'll just show them my social security card and my passport and my birth certificate.
Some kid in Florida just did that, and they say nope.
And it was a whole kid. That was the other thing, right? Like he was young. He wasn't out here like you guys can look up the video of him being reunited with his mom. That kid just broke in her arms. Like this,
Oh yeah,
these are like this is a kid,
it's a
right?
kid.
And a whole judge did not care about, even though he verified and confirmed, that judge confirmed, yes, this is a legitimate document,
Hmm.
but was still like, I'm gonna wait for ICE to get here.
Yeah.
So for everyone that's like, oh, this they're actually only going after criminals. No, they're not.
No.
For anyone that's like, oh, they're actually going after undocumented people. No, they're
No.
not,
No.
because they're going after visa holders and permanent residents and US citizens.
Hmm.
So what is everyone waiting for? Where is the like why are y'all not why is not everyone not upset?
Everybody still thinks that they're gonna be okay. This is the thing that we're seeing with Trump supporters specifically, is that they're very upset when Trump's laws affect them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people angry that tariffs are affecting their business. There was this lawyer who was a huge Trump supporter who was upset that while he was returning from a trip to Canada, he was questioned by immigration officials, and they asked to take his phone and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a story last night that was very telling of what's happening. So a comedian was telling me that another comedian was coming back from a trip abroad,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the officials at the airport, immigration officials, whatever, these people were checking the passports really thoroughly this time. And they asked this person, "What do you do for a living?" And they went, "I'm a comedian."
Mm-hmm.
And stone cold faced, the agent went, "Do you have any jokes against Trump?" And the person was like, "Dear God, do not look on my phone, because I have."
Who doesn't have jokes about
Who
Trump?
doesn't have jokes about Trump if
That's
you're a comedian? But the key word was against.
yeah. Yeah.
And this person was like, "I'm now terrified of traveling with my joke books."
Mm-hmm.
Because as a comedian, if you read a comedian's joke books, it is all over the place, because we're trying to figure
Of
out
course.
who
You're creating your set.
we're creating our set.
Yeah.
And they were trying to take this person's jokes to see what they were talking about. And eventually, like, are you going to go after comedians who joke about Trump?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, you see slippery slope on how they come after people. And
Right.
this is a US citizen
Right.
with children.
Right. Right. Exactly. So I mean, and again, I'm sure I always like to address the skeptics in the room because it is what it is, right? And I'm sure they're like, that probably didn't happen. All good. The more and more reports that come out, the more and more you doubt it, the more and more all that stuff. Again, I would say this a million times over. Once it is at your doorstep, once the issue is knocking on your door, whether literally or figuratively, it is too late.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone needs to realize.
Yeah.
So just because it's not affecting you right now does not mean that it's not important.
Yeah. And going back real quick to Kilmar, the proof of life, there was 2 tweets that were put out by Nayib that I just want to like
Mm-hmm.
talk about real quick. The first one was when the pictures were put out. Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, he wrote, "Kilmar Abrego Garcia miraculously risen from the death camps, quote unquote, and torture, now sipping margaritas with Senator Van Hollen in the tropical paradise of El Salvador."
Not this man acting like this is where he's keeping him. Like the tropical
Exactly.
paradise. Oh yeah, is he gonna stay in the tropical paradise? No, he went right back to CCOT.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that if you go around the back of CCOT. This restaurant isn't back there. It's like, oh,
Right.
no, we let them go out to the nice fancy restaurant to sip margaritas.
No, you wanted to not have the prison camp background because you now have a Democratic senator in your face being like, "Where is this man?" And you've had the Supreme Court technically telling our administration that they have to bring people back. No, you know that this is a shit show, and you know that you had to.
Yeah.
You couldn't actually have the senator visit him in the detention center, right? Because let's think about that. Why didn't that happen? Let's ask that vital question.
That is actually a vital question. That is absolutely true because there is, I don't know how to verify this, but there are those images
that people
have put out that are on Google Maps of CCOT and the stain of blood and what looks like bodies. It has not been confirmed.
Yeah, and
it
I
could
know
be
we
a lot of
talked about
things.
that, and I actually advised against it.
I am not bringing it up right now to try and talk about the story as if it's legit. We still got to figure out why that happened or not. But it is very telling that Bukele used the words death camp and torture as a way to try to deflect from all the criticism that's coming to what's happening in CCOT.
Correct, because actually, if you wanted to address what's happening, and if you cared to actually, give light to the conditions that Gilmad has been living under,
Yeah.
why aren't you taking him into CCOT?
No.
And if this is a quote unquote terrorist, like you claim, so when was the last time you took a terrorist to a restaurant?
To a restaurant.
When was the last time you had a terrorist meet with another government official or any government
margaritas.
official?
No cops there. I mean, I don't know in frame, but he was not wearing chains. He was not.
Right, correct. So is he actually a terrorist? Isn't he a terrorist?
Is he a terrorist?
So why are you just letting him for the photo op? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
This is why we ask questions, y'all, right? So like, and again, this is speculation. I like to admit when I speculate, this is speculation. So it's an opinion. Let's just caveat.
Shoot. Now that you've done all that preamble, shoot.
But I think it was to avoid showing the conditions of CCOT.
Of course.
Right? Because how many times have they given tours of not the spaces, let's clarify, I believe not the spaces that detainees and deportees, have actually been sent to, because as we've saw in the CNN tour, if you haven't seen it, feel free to check out the CNN tour that a reporter got of CCOT. That building where the deportees are being held at was actually not approved to be included in that tour. And when he asked why, the guy was like, no, it just wasn't approved. I wonder why. Right. And again, this is all speculation, and I admit that. But until we actually see what's happening there, until real answers are given, until the government stops deflecting, until things are actually addressed, why would we not speculate?
Exactly.
You're not doing anything to avoid that speculation. So you can't come at people for actually speculating.
And I think it's also the fact that a Democrat mayor from Maryland wanted to come down and see the facility. Previously on CCOT, it seems like they only let loyalists in. Like, of course, Kristi Noem, but they also just let in a few days ago another Republican who took those 2 thumbs up pictures in front of all those. Bukele lets YouTubers, conservative YouTubers, go down to CCOT and get a tour, and he guides them through what they're going to see. And even just recently, actually, Bukele retweeted the video from a year and a half ago of one of the conservatives in CCOT to be like, you see? Like, what are you talking about? Torture and death camps and all this stuff.
Exactly.
Like,
until you have someone from your opposing party, because at this point we just lump Bukele with Trump and his people, right? Until you have someone like the senator the governor who tried to, was he governor or senator?
Go on.
From Maryland, the governor, right?
But what did he try to do? I'm sorry.
That he tried to go visit CCOT and he wasn't allowed.
Oh, senator.
Senator.
Sorry,
I don't know why I had.
No, I was like, wait, what happened?
No,
did a governor try to do something? I got
a brain
confused.
fart. We'll see if we cut that out.
No.
But like, it's just, again, it's very telling. Like, you could have let him in.
Yeah.
But let me guess, you just didn't have time to prep for it.
Yeah.
Or didn't have, like, you could easily let him in the same way that you have enough security there, if that's the concern, supposedly. But clearly that's not, right? Because you sent Gilmad out to have a lunch with.
Yeah.
So, like, what is the issue, right? Why wasn't he allowed into actual CCOT?
Exactly. Prisoners never have a 2 p.m. luncheon that they need to go to.
Correct. Especially if they're supposedly so dangerous and so much of a terrorist that they can't send them back to the U.S.
And that's the thing, where after Bukele posted that, then he did another tweet just telling people, oh, now that Gilmad has been confirmed healthy, he gets the honor of staying in El Salvador's custody. This was so like
What a slap in the face.
this is okay. These people, to me, what they do more than anything is that they're so smug. They're just like laughing in our faces.
Mhm.
This whole thing by Bukele, and then, in the White House, when he was like, I'm not going to bring Kilmar back. He's a terrorist. Why am I going to let a terrorist out into the street? The entire time you saw the smug looks
Mhm.
from Donald Trump and JD Vance and everybody else around him, like holding back laughs, like, oh my God, we're fucking owning the libs.
Mhm.
We're owning these people. This is
Mhm.
the joy that they get out of people who like due process. Let's give people rights, let's give people food, let's give people the healthcare they get. They have these smug look on their face, like, we're not going to give you any of that.
Mhm.
And it's so funny that you think by asking us we're actually going to do it.
I just really have a question for like Republicans and everyone from that side, generally speaking, as a person. When you see your leadership taking joy out of causing suffering to others, I just don't know as a human, how do you look at that and be like, "Yep, that's who I want to represent me." Um, and I would like to think that it's maybe because they've actually been brainwashed and convinced to believe that every single immigrant is a criminal and is a terrorist and they should all, and they've been, freeloading off of everyone. And even though,
Racism is strong.
right,
To put that
exactly,
hatred on black and brown
right,
people is
and
very easy to put in white people's minds.
right, and even though every single time this administration brings up, oh yeah, these are terrorists, they show no evidence at all.
None.
And even though it's been proven time and time again that migrants and immigrants do crime significantly at a lower rate than U.S. citizens, and even though it's not immigrants that are out here doing school shootings, that are out here like serial killers that are out here, we're not talking about Jeffrey Dahmer, right? Like
No.
we're so even knowing that, and then you see your representatives on screen laughing and joking about homegrowns next,
Yeah.
y'all, and laughing about it. And even when this man made the stock market crash, but his buddies got money off of it, laughing in your
Mm-hmm.
faces too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're all
Yeah.
losing benefits left and right. No one,
Laughing in your face that you lost your money.
right. When people can't afford food, yet this administration, instead of using plastic eggs, is now going to use, what was it, like 20,000 eggs or something for fucking Easter.
Oh, they're
And
using the gold eggs kind of type
they're
shit.
using, right. So if
Yeah.
this isn't let them eat cake kind of energy, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So Republicans, again, I ask you to just question things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more and more people are doing it. And not for nothing for y'all, I'm proud of y'all. Like a side note, I know it's maybe taboo to say, but I'm proud of the people that are actually going to town halls and speaking up and questioning shit, because that's what everyone should be doing right now.
I give props to the Republicans who were at the Grassley
Mm-hmm.
town hall when they were like, why aren't you bringing him back? The
Mm-hmm.
Supreme Court said to bring him back. Bring him back. You are a liar. And Grassley's like, oh man, if there's any point to just die of old age, this will be it.
But no, but it's true though, right? Because, and that's what these intimidation tactics across the board, going after everyone that's talking about things that this administration doesn't want to be talked
Yeah.
about, it goes against everything that is American,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like for all these patriots, and everyone's like, well, if you love this country, if you love this country, you would know that
Yeah.
it was founded on checks and balances. You would know the concept of separation of church and state. You would know that it's actually absolutely fucking insane to be teaching kids the Bible in school as a foundational element of the creation of America. We left the fucking, like, we left Europe and completely and didn't want to have anything to do with them because they wanted to impose certain religious beliefs. What the fuck? Like, what's
Well,
happening?
actually, that's the also the mythology
Yeah.
of what America was founded on. America was not founded on religious freedom. America was actually founded on religious, like, prosecution, and
Mhm.
like, because like these people left Europe because Europe was being very progressive
Mhm.
towards religion,
Mhm.
letting people live, have their own religion, and the radical factions. They were the ones that left to the U.S. being like, you know what, we're gonna start stricter religions in the U.S. So it is the
Huh.
opposite. This country is actually, in my viewpoint, and I hate to, to contradict you so hard, like a host, but it is actually resetting to its original form.
Mm.
Checks and balances were never meant to work for us. Their anger is that the system that they built for a little bit gave us a few little crumbs: the right to vote, the right to own property, women the right to vote, maybe control their body for about 60 years. And then white men were like, yeah, we don't want to fucking do this anymore. Who is the white racist that can take us back to 1776? Enslavement, rich white folk, only men can vote, religious zealous, everybody else is beneath us. Donald J. fucking Trump. That's the 10th F. And we have reset to what this country is. And as much as right now, this is turmoil for everyone, everyone's seeing who the United States really is in its core. It is this. It is the founding. It is the original operating system. It is white 1.0 that they want to go back to, which takes me back to actually the last story that we want to do tonight. It is actually about a white supremacist. Now, you may hear the story and you would think to yourself, doesn't sound like a white supremacist, but I'm going to tell you why he is a white supremacist. Not other than the fact that he said it. This kid is Nikita Kasap. He unalived, killed, we can say that on a podcast, his parents in hopes to get the money so he can use from the life insurance and all those resources that he would get to kill Donald Trump. His plan was to assassinate the president. Now, you hear that and you go, sounds like a liberal. If he's gone crazy enough to unalive his parents so he can unalive Trump, he's got to be a liberal. No, he is a white supremacist. White, he had a manifesto. White supremacists have changed their ideology to believe that taking out Trump will actually accelerate. This is the part. This is the part where here it is. Okay, so he believes he is a neo-Nazi. Okay, this is what his manifesto said, and he believes that by taking out the president, he will accelerate the race war that's coming and try to create a white ethno state for for white people. That's what he wants to create. He wants to create a white ethno state by killing the president. And people who have been following white supremacy are saying that they have mutated. This is like I was saying, this is like The Last of Us, where the fungus has now learned how to be smarter and more strategic and things like that. Trump has been around for 10 years. White supremacy has evolved beyond him, where now they believe taking him out is actually a good thing for the white supremacy race because he has laid the foundation for them to be able to rise, but he is not strong enough to fully get them there.
I just like,
yeah.
This
These people
is
have been talking to Russia, to people in Russia through something called Telegram app. That's what they've been using, these right wingers who are going further than a lot of other groups, now saying that actually taking out the president should be the next goal, specifically Trump.
Yeah, because that's going to cause enough turmoil and conflict to potentially.
You can spread lies and say that it was, the
Yeah.
way things go around on the internet. It could be a white neo-Nazi, white supremacist. He wrote a manifesto, but there would still be people online who'd be like, oh, he was a paid actor by the Democrats.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in the same way that they keep thinking that everyone that's going to protest is paid. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's also terrifying because it's also an interesting manipulation tactic, right? That it's like put someone to unalive this person to ultimately probably frame the Democratic Party and then potentially start,
a race war.
Yeah.
That's what he wants to start. He wants to start a race war.
Yeah.
So again, this is sort of going back to the last conversation that we're having, is that checks and balance, all these rules, all these things that have helped people of color come to a point where we're slightly seen as humans, is not good enough for these white supremacists. That's why they want to go back to a white ethno state.
Yeah.
These rules, these laws that we as people of color have come to see as small little protections for us, that is too much for us in their eyes, and they want to take it all away.
Yeah.
So this is where, unfortunately, we talk about, oh my God, what's happening? In my eyes, it's happening the United States, it's resetting itself to what it always has been and what it always wants to be, a white ethno state.
Yeah.
So the vital question is, how much are we going to let it become a white ethno state, or how much are we going to say to ourselves, I'm tired of this pattern.
Yeah.
I am absolutely exhausted. It's been 600-700 years of this pattern, of white supremacy, them coming into power, them taking whatever they want, them changing the laws, them changing the rules, them taking us out, them putting us in jails, concentration camps, slavery, all this stuff. And then once we get out, they start the pattern all over again in different forms. Jim Crow, segregation, all the stuff. And now we're in a new era of segregation.
Yeah.
We're in a new era of white ethno states. And it isn't just the United States. Italy has a right-wing government. Argentina has a white supremacist government. I know you're like, wait, they're like in Latin America. You could be a white supremacist also in Latin America. There's a lot of countries who are currently moving more towards the right wing, and now more than ever, global powers have fallen into the right at the same time, because in like the 1940s or whatever, during World War II, it was like Germany, Italy, Spain, and maybe a few Latin American countries. But now it's a lot more widespread with like Russia,
Yeah.
Hungary, Italy, the United States, El Salvador. So now there's this sort of coalition of these people who want to create white ethno states, even in Latin America.
Yeah.
They want to take out indigenous people.
Yeah.
They want to be like, mejorar la raza until we're white supremacists.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's, again, just circling back to the Gilmar case, the Supreme Court decision, which was unanimous to require him to come back. That's why everyone's watching this particular case even more so, right? Because the judiciary, that branch of government, is supposed to uphold the rule of law, is supposed to ensure that people are abiding by what our laws are, is supposed to ensure that due process is granted. And so the Supreme Court is the highest court of our country and is expected to do the right thing, right? So like at this point, there was that, we didn't touch on it too much, but the whole concept of the administration may be held in criminal contempt because of not listening to the court order of requiring Gilman to be sent back.
Yeah.
And they can call him a terrorist as much as they're blue in the face, but they've yet to present any actual real evidence of being a terrorist.
Yeah.
So at this point, due process calls for you to listen to a court order and send them back. So yeah, and I mean, criminal contempt of court is just generally you're not listening to a court order.
Yeah.
Normally, if it's an individual, you're either subject to potential fines or even prison time, right? But this has never happened before, right? There's never been a case where a sitting U.S. president didn't listen to a court order.
Yeah.
So when everyone's like, well, so what's going to happen? I don't know either. And I don't think a lot of people in the legal profession actually know, because there's no precedent for this. This hasn't happened before. So now it's up to, candidly, I feel like it's up to the Supreme Court to ultimately do something, right? And I'm, as a, officer of the court, as the lawyers are called, I'm begging them to at this point. Like, this is, why did I go to school? Why did I become a lawyer? Why did any of us who are lawyers, why did we do this? For what? If this is all good, like, if it does not matter, why did we do this? If that's the case, then you know what? Wipe the rest of my student loans, because why am I paying that back?
Yo.
For what? For what? Why am I paying back the rest of my student loans?
If I went to school for law and you getting rid of all the law that I learned, I shouldn't pay for college.
Correct, because it doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
So then maybe I should not. We shouldn't pay our student loans then, if that's the case.
If you're a lawyer, hey, don't pay your student loans.
No.
Hey, check with a lawyer.
No, but and I say it in jest and kind of like, playing around, kind of, but like not really, right?
Really.
Because the point is that this system was created for a reason, to stop this exact situation. It's so funny. I've also seen in my like algorithm, I don't know why, but I've seen more and more former military and former armed forces people addressing this and being like, we took an oath, right? And ironically, the same thing that lawyers do. Lawyers take an oath to uphold the Constitution. So does the military. And this person, again, I forgot their name, but this person highlighted the fact that the first oath you take is to protect the Constitution.
Not the president.
Correct. That comes after the fact. And they were like, and there's a reason for that, because the Constitution is upheld regardless of whatever, because that becomes first and foremost, such that if the president is not abiding by the Constitution and upholding it, then realistically, the military's duty is now that president has become potentially an enemy of the state, potentially actually a problem to the Constitution,
Mhm.
potentially a danger to the Constitution. So military, what's your
Mhm.
responsibility?
Mhm.
And I'll let you guys answer that.
And this is where, like, contempt of court, like you said, the military coming after someone for not upholding the Constitution. I think I want to finish with this. I think the person who's gonna, like, in the speculation, who's gonna take the blame for all this, it's gonna be little Marco. It's gonna be little Marco Rubio.
Sigue ahí bien pendejo.
Pendejo, gusano, como dicen, because he was the one that went down to El Salvador and made the deal.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that is being given the power as Secretary of State to revoke visas,
Yep.
green cards, everything as he so chooses.
Yeah, he's gonna be the fall guy.
When they were having the meeting at the White House where Bukele said, "I'm not bringing him back," Marco Rubio was 2 people away from, like, Trump
Mm-hmm.
and Bukele.
Mm-hmm.
He is in every photo op where this
Mhm.
happens. If this goes down, Trump's gonna, "Oh, yeah, it was little Marco. He's the one that went to El Salvador. I didn't even see the contract. The contract? What contract? We made a contract with El Salvador. I didn't sign anything. Little Marco did that. He was telling me what to say." And then before you know it, Marco Rubio is the fall guy for this whole administration. He's the one in court going, "I was just following orders." Oh,
Remember how
where
well
have
that
we heard that before?
yeah, where has that excuse worked in the past, bro?
And the man whose orders you were following is notorious for telling people, "I didn't give you any orders."
Mhm.
Because Trump talks like a mob man. He's like, "Listen, it'd be really nice if we got a little cut from that oil business down in El Salvador. I'm not saying you have to get it first. I'm just saying it'd be nice if we got it." So that way he's not telling you anything directly. He's just suggesting, "Wouldn't it be nice if we just sent a full homegrown to El Salvador?" I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying it'd be kind of nice. Wouldn't you be a good little baby boy if you could look that up for me, little Marco? And then it's just like, "Sure, no thing, boss." And he's the idiot who gets caught with the bag.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be, I don't know, very fitting if that ends up happening. But yeah, unfortunately, part of the issue is the Supreme Court put us in a bind with their ruling before this administration came back, right?
Yeah.
A ruling that basically this guy was invincible. And
Yeah.
hey, conservative judges, I get that, that's an issue, and I get that you guys are, I maybe at some point supported this man, but you guys shot yourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
You basically took out so much power from the judiciary branch,
Yeah.
and whoever voted in favor of that should be ashamed of themselves.
Mhm.
As a Supreme Court justice, how dare you?
Yeah. And I'll finish on this thought. Maybe this, I was trying to think, like, of this question all week. Is it the vital question of the week? It's going to be the title of the episode. Are Republicans starting to sort of eat each other?
Mhm.
Because Trump is ignoring the Supreme Court, mostly conservative,
Mhm.
right? They're sort of infighting right now between white supremacists on should they take out Trump. Do you know what I
Jesus
mean?
Christ.
There is,
That's
so there
crazy.
seems to be, like, this infighting within the
Mhm.
Republican Party of which section of it is going to be ultimately in power. Is it going to be the Republicans, like the Supreme Court, who still want to get people out, but they still want to follow some kind of rule of law and
Mhm.
gives, ba-da-da. Or are we following the whites, the white supremacists like Trump,
Mhm.
who want to be in power and want to, like, kick everybody out? Or is it going to be the neo-Nazis fully
Mhm.
who want to accelerate? That's what it's called. It's called the acceleration of the race war,
Mhm.
and literally create ethno states, white ethno states. Which 3 levels of Republicans are going to win out right now because they're at war?
Right.
They talk about us Democrats like, "Oh, you guys can't fucking even like Cory Booker." I'm like, "Hey, we're talking about, like, nuances here." We could say, Cory Booker needs to do a lot better on Palestine, and I would not support that. But we're not saying, take out Cory Booker and do this,
Yeah,
and
no.
and bomb his house or send pizzas to
No.
his house. You know what I mean? We're trying to have debates on how do we grow as a party to
Correct.
make sure that all of our voices are heard, because we all have very different things that we deeply care about.
And that's what it is to actually be a patriot, right? Like it's so upsetting whenever I read the whole comments of like, well, you should, if you don't like this country, you should get out of it. And if you have so many criticisms of it, you should get out of it. No, it's because this country was founded supposedly on the principles of immigrants. Literally. You dumb. What is the point of the Statue of Liberty? What is the point of Ellis Island? Have y'all ever been? Like what? Like I don't.
Adding on to that myth.
Yeah. No,
Adding on to
and I get that, and I get your point about like it's a myth and all that stuff. And yes, agreed.
Mhm.
But my point to you is that like I don't think anyone, not anyone, I don't think a lot of people think as critically to understand the domino that you just described.
Mhm.
The reason why I brought up like these quote unquote pillars of government
Mhm.
and these ideologies of government and the
Mhm.
foundation of
Mhm.
America is because that is what it's supposed to be
Yeah,
founded on,
and
right?
they're supposed to be I
Right.
understand, and they are supposed to be there to help us.
Right.
Yeah.
And but irrespective of being there to help us, just as principles,
Mhm.
right? How do we forget these principles? And by the we, I don't mean us. I mean like Republicans, right?
Mhm.
That's what I'm talking to right now.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like the bigger picture of, hey, these systems actually don't work that well. And historically, we are constantly targeted. And
Yeah.
all. I hear you, and you're right. And but that's not my point.
Mhm.
My point is bigger. More, I'm trying to like throw reason at Republicans right
Yeah.
now, and that like these destructions
Yeah.
of democratic pillars,
Mhm.
irrespective of America, just as a democracy,
Mhm.
checks and balances, separation of church and
Yeah.
state, like all these things are foundational elements
Mhm.
of our government
Mhm.
that is being destroyed left and right.
Yeah.
And even if you are a Catholic, Christian, whatever it is, your religion that you want it to be in your schools and whatever,
Mhm.
as a principle, you should see the issue with introducing that into a public school. Now, if it's a private Catholic school, if it's a private religious school, do your thing. But at a public school that's funded by the US government, there's supposed to be a separation of church and state
Mhm.
rather than trying to withhold funding from public
Mhm.
schools that are teaching other things that are not religious.
Yeah.
Rather than because, oh, yeah, you don't agree with certain ideologies, that now the federal government has the authority to withhold funding. That's not what we were founded on.
Yeah.
So, yes, agree that these principles maybe not always work out that way, but at a fundamental concept, they're supposed to,
Yeah.
and they're supposed to exist. And Republicans, that that's true.
Mhm.
So they are non-existing. There
Mhm.
is no separation of church and
Mhm.
state. You have the president, look it up. You have him flat out saying, I am the law.
I am the
You
law.
have
I am
him flat
king.
out saying that his cabinet has to listen to him.
Mhm.
You have him flat out, you have him, his White House, social media thing, putting out him as a king. What do you not see? You
Yeah.
have to understand the danger of this.
Yeah.
That I understand that maybe you feel a fear of publicly talking out about this because your community supports him, because you're in a red state, because whatever it is. But in your heart of hearts, you have to know that this is an issue. You have to see our democracy crumbling, and red flags are supposed to be going off in your head.
Mhm.
They have to be.
Yeah.
Whether you admit it or not, they have to be.
They're not unfortunately, those red flags are not gonna go off until they're being hurt, and
Hmm.
that's the reality of a lot of these people, and even after they're hurt, they still won't separate the fact that their racism got them there and their hatred for the other got them there
Right.
to hurt themselves more than anything else, because we did nothing to them, they did this all to themselves. If anything, our existence, we're always trying to make their lives better. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Through our work and our creativity and our stuff, we all cheesy as it is, we all do better when we actually do work together. Progress comes a lot faster.
Yeah.
Innovation is a lot more beautiful. But their hatred for, if we're not the ones who can steal the idea or create the idea or do anything with it, we don't want anybody else to shine from it. So that's where we're at, and that's why they're trying to take us back to a white ethno state. So remember that this week, whenever you see these stories that are going to continue coming out of him defying the Supreme Court and more people of color being put behind bars and stuff like that, just remember that this is all planned to try and create a white ethno state. And there are facts, there is a civil war within the Republican Party of how to get there and how fast.
Yeah. And then we all may end up being collateral damage as a part of that.
All of it.
Right. And again, this is
Even white people involved. Don't
right.
think you're safe from this.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So
Yeah. Geez, that's this week's episode. Remember, watch out for the white ethno state.
how about we to talk about, I don't know, how about in the comments people leave how they're finding happiness in this space, and how are they, something positive of
You know
like,
what? Yeah, you want to finish off on something that's been really fun. I'll tell you, like, it's kind of a stand-up joke, but I'll tell you something that's been finding happiness in. I've been finding happiness in watching Hot Ones.
yeah.
Like, that's been actually really fun. And I made a joke about this in my act, but I do like to see white dudes in pain when they eat the wings. I know they're actors, they're decent people for the most part, but
Yeah.
I just take it further. Like, well, you are a white man who's really crying right now, and I need this to be like the tears for the children who are in cages.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah. So
So just so we don't use our entire population of white people, just to clarify, like
no,
it's
they're great. You know
yeah.
what I mean? But I'm just like, using it as like, wow, I love seeing white dudes in pain. Like, that's why I joke that more conservatives should go on Hot Ones.
Oh my
Like, I want to see Tucker Carlson just sweating like a motherfucker on that's number 11 curse,
God.
just sweating it up after eating just a wing with pepper on it.
I mean, yeah, I'm all for seeing conservatives in pain, yes.
Yes,
I'll put it there.
through how, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
won't necessarily say white people, but
Yeah,
I'm into seeing
conservatives, yeah,
conservatives in
yeah.
pain.
So that's been my little bit of happiness, just watching Hot Ones.
And
That's just
again,
been a
to
bit of awesome.
clarify, just because I love, not I love, I think people take things out of context all the time. So we're not talking about actual pain. We're talking about chicken wings. That's what Hot Ones is. It's a chicken wing show on
Speak for
YouTube.
yourself. See, she's the lawyer who has to say things like this. I don't want Republicans in physical pain. I want them in the kind of pain that makes them realize, oh
Like
my
to
God, I'm a
understand.
shitty person.
Right. Yeah. Because if you've lived a life of privilege and you've actually never experienced any kind of struggle and all that stuff. And again, this is a generalization, not saying all Republicans are
That's
like
what I'm
this,
saying.
but like to generate empathy,
Yeah,
like, because there's just a sincere lack of empathy throughout that, like,
yeah.
is one of the main issues.
And when they
But
eat the wings, I feel like they feel in their body that uncomfortableness that I feel every day in the world. So that's why I like Hot Ones. What's making you happy this week?
So I've been reading, we're trying to get through Michelle Obama's Becoming.
Mm-hmm.
And have been for a while. I think that's more of a side note, and it's nothing about the book or Michelle Obama, who I adore, and think she's absolutely incredible. It's more of a law school made me hate reading kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm relearning the joy of reading for leisure, and the book and the way she tracks her time at the White House and their time at the White House, and just that time of American history is a reminder of how things used to be and the hope that existed during that time and the genuine leadership that we had. And again, it's not to say that Obama didn't make mistakes. Of course, everyone makes mistakes. But that there was this even camaraderie and respect within the executive branch. Um, you know, I she talks about Bush and how gracious he and his family were when the Obamas were coming in, and they ensured to have a transition plan for them, and then they instructed everyone to like make everything as seamless as possible for the
Yeah.
Obamas. Mrs. Bush took the Michelle and the girls on like a tour of the White House, and then like they're in the book, it shows a picture of them, like the girls like sliding down like these stairs in the White House. So it's this element of, yes, we're part of different parties. Yes, we may have different views. We're all human, and ultimately we care about this country and want to see it succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So for the fact that that kind of energy in the office, in the president's office doesn't exist right now is, again, just really disheartening. But it's a reminder of what used to be and hopefully what maybe not will come back at some point in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
So it's a nice reminder of how things used to be. So it's bringing me joy because I'm reminded of that existence.
Yeah.
And while I read that book, I get to sit back in that space and feel like we're back there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
unfortunately, we're not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I heard the audiobook, and having her break down that time of the transition and what it meant to her and stuff, it is very powerful. I mean, it was a moment that no matter how much they try to erase, it happened, and
Yeah.
we were there for a while. And there was hope, as cheesy as it was hope in that time that we hadn't had in a very long time, and we
Mhm.
haven't had since. So yeah, so it's okay, and it's all right to want to have that kind of hope again in a candidate or in someone who you think is actually going to come through and do for you. So it's nice. It's nice that you can go back and read something like that. I'm like, man, there was a moment there where we have some hope. And
Yeah.
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 Hey, you know what? Yeah, send us in the comments or anything that's making you happy. I would love to hear it. I like, any TV, book, show,
Yeah.
anything small in your life. You know what I mean? You saw a puppy and you pet it and that made you happy. You know what I mean? Find joy in every little bit of life. Let's not, they want to win by keeping us constantly in shock and awe, as we've been
Mhm.
saying. So have some happiness and yeah, and we'll bring next week some more happiness. We'll try to have some joy this weekend. We'll bring it.
Maybe that's what we should do. Maybe we should try to like talk about what made us happy for the week,
Yeah.
just because everything is so doom and gloom,
Yeah.
understandably so.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's important for us to,
Joy of the week.
yeah.
Every episode, we'll be like, hey, what was your joy of the week? All
Yeah,
right.
cute.
We'll bring you back another joy of the week. Stay informed. Remember to subscribe, like, share, all that stuff so we can continue spreading information. Always appreciate you tuning in.
Sharing the right information, not spreading information.
Sharing the right information. We always appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next week. Say bye like a host.
Bye. Thanks for listening.
Bye.